Sidetracked, the music podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Sidetracked Music Podcast. We're back again after our latest episode, the top 50. Today we're changing timescales a bit, but first we'll say hello to everyone else who's there with me. God, that's a weird way to say it. Zach, how was Freshers?
Freshers was pretty wild. I'm all moved in to my new flat, which is surrounded by musicians who practice all the time, and I can't get away from it because my window is broken and left on open. So there might be some background noise for you all today under my speech.
Well, at least we don't have to pay for the rights for that music.
Exactly.
Yes, and well, Zephyr, on that note, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I heard you. I was about to say, I heard you were at a jazz festival. How was that?
I was at the world-renowned Montreal International Jazz Festival over the last couple of days, which usually happens in like June, but this year, I guess because of COVID or something, it happened now. I mean, in September. Tickets were free, which was amazing. You just have to kind of go and like reserve online. So I saw 3 shows on Friday, 3 shows on Saturday. And it was really cool. It weren't particularly like well-known bands. But I saw like the two 5 o'clock shows were like jazz trios. So it was very kind of, the first one I saw was kind of very kind of traditional jazz trio. The Emmy R. Roussel trio. They're very good. And Misk, who are kind of younger, slightly more like avant-garde kind of thing. They had all these soundscapes going. It was very cool. Yeah. It was kind of slightly minimalist. It kind of built up and then kind of came back down again with rhythm stuff. It was very cool.
That's cool.
And then, I saw on Saturday at 7, I saw Shaylia, who you may have heard of. I don't know, but she's a kind of soul singer. And it was really good actually. I'd never really heard of it. It was a kind of good upbeat music. It's a really cool backing band. It was quite minimalist. They just had drums, bass, and a guitar and keys. And towards the end, these 2 kind of dancers came on, and they were really, really good. It was quite. I don't usually care that much for kind of the dancing and stage performance aspect, but it was actually quite cool to see. But by far the best performance for me was the Brooks, who are just a kind of big jazz funk band. They came along on Friday night at 9 o'clock, and it was such a their intro was really cool. They had a kind of sonic thing, and then it just kind of cut, and they just broke into some groove, and it was like, okay, now we're talking. Everyone was dancing. So cool. It was a really cool atmosphere, and it was really nice to like do something like that after it's like the first time in a couple of years being in a gig like that.
Yeah, that's the thing with all this stuff coming out now, isn't it? Like we can go out and go to gigs, and it's just like so fun because it's just been so long, like 18 months or whatever. And artists never fail to say at the performances, it's been a hard, long 18 months, but we're finally here. They say that every performance, and it gets a bit boring. But
yeah, well, the guy from the book,
so.
he said it quite nicely. Actually, he said the lead man was a very, very cool. He had an amazing stage presence. He was singing and playing the trombone. And,
wow, that's cool.
At the same time?
No.
It's cool effects.
But he had a very cool stage presence, and he was like, we're here to remind you what the good times were like and how good the times are going to be in the future. And it was like, the future is now. And everyone was like, yeah. I agree.
I wish we could have been there. That would have been cool.
Yeah. Sounds like it would have been less cringe if you were there.
No, it was. He made it sound cool. He had the right accent for that kind of thing. I wrote down there was something called, there was one guy I saw. It was more of a kind of blues rock thing. I was a bit less of a fan, but it was pretty amazing. This guy called Steve Hill. He was simultaneously playing the guitar, singing, playing the drums. Wow. I mean, I say there's more, but yeah, I'm playing the drums, but in an amazing way. So he had like the kick and snare kind of with pedals. Mm-hmm. So both his feet were kind of doing that. And on the end of his guitar, he'd attached some kind of drumstick thing. So he was hitting like the hi-hat and the cymbal with like the end of his guitar as he played. He was kind of rocking
So he's like
along.
rocking back and forth as he was playing, kind of smacking the hi-hat.
Wow.
That's
It was
actually
really
impressive.
And it
And
was
then
amazing
also playing
because-
the guitar at the same time.
Yeah, and it was
And
amazing
singing.
because sometimes like his backing band cut out and it was just him, but it sounded like a full band. It was like he's creating all of the sound. It was really impressive.
That is really cool.
Wow.
I love
Yeah.
one-man band stuff.
I got
like
watch a
the
clip
amount
of
of
that.
practice that must go into like playing simultaneous instruments.
Yeah.
People spend their lives studying, and then you can just do it like,
Yeah,
3 at a
yeah,
time.
exactly.
Bloody hell.
It was really good musicianship. And of course, throughout the entire festival, there were appropriate dank faces on show
Of course.
on the big screens. Yeah, I don't know. I recorded a few things, so I don't know. I might kind of pipe them on under this conversation if the sound quality is good enough. We'll see. It may or may not be there as you listen. We'll see. Anyway, it's time to get on to the brief. I should say in part 2. So you can look forward to my artist spotlight of Paolo Nutini. But in part 1, Zephyr has set the brief. And Zephyr, what have you set for us today?
So I've set favorite Beatles tracks. And for those who don't know, which is probably not many people because the Beatles are one of the biggest groups ever. Like, I think the biggest supergroup in the world and are known by most countries and are played in pretty much every country. But anyway, if you don't know, the Beatles were an English rock pop band who started in Liverpool, which is in England. Again, if you don't know, but I'd be shocked if you don't. But anyway, they formed in the 60s, and the members were John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. Unfortunately, John Lennon and George Harrison have passed away, but Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney are still alive. And interestingly, I don't know if you guys know this, but Ringo Starr is the guy who does the voiceover on Thomas the Tank Engine. He's the narrator.
I did know that.
No way.
It's a really cool fact. That is.
He's the narrator of
hilarious.
Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah.
But
What a fall from grace. Like, well, 1 minute you're playing in front of like 100,000 people. The next minute you're playing a Blue Train.
I was about to sing the theme tune, but I will not. So yeah,
No,
most
please, no.
most people would probably say they're most successful and influential band in the history of popular music. Many kind of artists probably wouldn't be around today if they hadn't have made the music they did. They released 13 super successful albums, and we're all going to be looking at kind of I think we're all looking at different albums actually, which is good. And so yeah, the genres are kind of like it changed kind of throughout the time. It started more rocky, kind of inspired by like 1950s like American rock and roll. And they kind of moved as they got older and did a lot of drugs because they did a lot of drugs. They kind of moved on to more psychedelic kind of rock and pop, and became much more experimental. And their producer, who his name has completely left my head, but he is the most renowned producer. George Martin, that's the one. He is probably the most. He's probably the most influential producer as well, and he kind of helped them on their journey. And yeah, and they broke up in the 70s, and it was very sad. But they all went on to make more great music, which you can obviously go listen to. But yeah, I think we're starting with Zach. So Zach, what have you brought to the brief today?
Well, I bought a song that I actually only discovered pretty recently when I was doing my favourite pastime, which is to listen to an entire Beatles album, start to finish. And I was listening to Rubber Soul, and the first track came on, Drive My Car, which I absolutely love. What a banger. And then it finished, and the second track came on, which I didn't know. It was called Norwegian Wood. It was a completely different vibe, kind of quite nostalgic, quite calming, but also some kind of quite intriguing, I'd say. It was like the Beatles is one of their most experimental songs, and written primarily by John Lennon, although Paul McCartney disputes this. It was one of their biggest arguments. Yeah, I know.
Sorry, my face was because is it George Harrison sings this track, right?
I don't think so.
I would have sworn this is one of them. I thought, hang on, I'm going to do some... You keep talking, I'm going to research it.
No, so George Harrison is the guy who plays the sitar on this. So he plays the iconic riff on the sitar, which he's only just been learning for about, I think, a couple of months. And he picked it up because he thought, I might be able to play this given I can play the guitar, only to discover that the sitar is incredibly difficult.
Yeah,
so
they are very difficult to play, and they're also very difficult to source if you live in the UK, because there's only I think you have to get them imported from India.
Well, he got a really cheap one, and then kind of overdubbed it, and there's really, really cool effect. And actually, that was a really influential use of the sitar, because it hadn't really been used in like pop music of the day. And then after this like song came out, many other bands went on to use it in their songs, like the Rolling Stones used it, BJ Thomas used it, like pretty much loads of bands did it. Anyway, this song, I'm going to play it to you now, so you can get some context for the Wood. And as we established in the break, it was not sung by George Harrison. Jules, thanks for the unwelcome interruption there.
No need to out me like that.
So I think one of the biggest parts of this song, which I don't say often as an instrumentalist, is the lyrics. But no, it's true. The lyrics are very interesting in this song. So on the surface of it, it seems like it's about a man who's invited to a woman's house that's made of lots of Norwegian wood, hence the title. And the woman leads the man on to believe that a fun time is on the menu.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Brilliant.
Thank you. But instead, she ends up making him sleep in the bathtub. And yeah, I know. And when he wakes up the next day, she has gone to work and he is left in her house. And as an act of revenge, he then burns down her house. Yes.
Active shock on my face.
I know. So the last line of the lyrics is, so I lit a fire, isn't it good, Norwegian wood? Which before the Beatles came out and told everyone what the meaning was, people thought it was like, maybe he was lighting a cozy fire in the house and like with Norwegian wood around. No. They were like, it's an act of revenge.
Arson. No,
exactly.
Oh, well, that's funny.
But the true meaning of this song, which John Lennon came out with a few years later, is that it was actually about an affair that he was having. So he didn't want his wife Cynthia to know, obviously, about the affair. And he admitted to having lots and lots of affairs over the years. And so he wanted to write a song about it, but he wanted to keep it subtle. And so this is kind of similar to a experience he had with one of his mistresses.
Yeah, that's right.
Affairies is not. That sounds like a fairy. That just sounds like.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting fact, and just kind of, it's very subtle and astute songwriting on their part. Because I mean, this was the '60s, but they're kind of writing about topics like cheating and revenge and lust and arson, which obviously would have been frowned upon. And they just get away with it because it's just so subtle. So yeah, very interesting song. What do you guys think about it?
I really like the more like the very acoustic and very kind of fun. It feels like you could be by a campfire listening to it, but then you listen to the lyrics and it's like, oh, that's actually quite dark. That's like not as I kind of guess a lot of the stuff we look about is kind of like the parallels, isn't it, between the kind of the music being this fun and happy thing, because it's all quite major. It's very diatonic. It's not at all like there's no like weird
absolutely.
Out there. Like it just feels very. It's like a very, I guess it's a very not basic song, but it's a very kind of easy listen to. It's no like you don't have to like think about it. It's not like unpleasant in any way. There's not really much dissonance or anything. It's just kind of nice.
It's not like jazz. God.
Oh, jazz. Gross. Tony didn't spend 5 minutes at the beginning talking about a jazz festival.
Oh, no, totally. Yeah. No, unfortunately, I don't have my keyboard to hand right now. But I will talk a tiny bit about the theory. So the verse, as you said, stays on one chord the entire time. And so does like the main riff. It's all over one major chord. And then it finally changes at like I don't know if you can really call it a chorus because the lyrics change every time, but it's like a different section.
It's like a hook.
It's
like the melody is the same, but the lyrics change.
Yeah. No, so like the chord changes to a minor chord, and then it changes again a couple of times, and yeah, it's just a nice change from the like same chord over and over again, which can get a bit wearing, even though there's lots of interesting stuff going on over the top of it. Yeah, I just thought really interesting song, really experimental. I mean, staying on one chord for a long time and using like a sitar is just not what anyone else is doing in like 60s rock and roll. So it just shows how, innovative they were. But I think we should move on. So who's next?
I believe it's
Who wants
Jules.
to volunteer?
Jules, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's me.
Aha.
So my Beatles song is "Don't Let Me Down," which it sounds. I don't know. It's weird saying like the title of the song. It feels like I have to say "Don't Let Me Down," but it's such a kind of iconic rhythm. But I'm going to play it now and talk about it afterwards because it's a slightly kind of niche one. I don't know. It's kind of recognizable, but also not particularly played that often. So I'm going to play that now. So it's "Don't Let Me Down." That was "Don't Let Me Down" from the Beatles. And so it actually wasn't part of any album. They recorded it during the Let It Be sessions, but it was dropped from the album before release. And it was actually only released as a B-side to Get Back, which is really weird because I think it's one of those songs that's kind of gained in popularity over time. But it was late stage contemplative Beatles. It was the one when like John Lennon had his kind of long hair and goatee and like Harry Potter glasses.
No, they're the John Lennon glasses, not the Harry Potter. Harry Potter stole them.
Anyway, but yeah, and I should mention, so there's a pretty important keyboard part which is played by Billy Preston. I don't know what else he's done. I just thought he should get a mention because it's pretty important in the song. But yeah, I don't know, the iconic bit of this song, I guess, is the kind of "Don't Let Me Down," which is in 3 compared to the rest of the song, which is kind of in 4. And it's the kind of effect of doing the three beats over 2. It kind of slows down and it feels like it's kind of breaking up the rhythm, and then it kind of goes back into the 4. And it's really effective. It kind of completely catches your attention because it's not like they're playing the 3 and they've still got like the 2 beats going on behind. The whole band stops and it goes 1, 2, 3. And yeah, it's really effective. That's a kind of iconic bit of the song, I guess. As well as I don't know, just like repetition of "Don't Let Me Down." The way that John Lennon sings it is kind of very passionate and like slightly raspy. It feels really like he's kind of speaking. He's saying something, Yeah, that's kind of what I've got to say about the song.
Yeah, it surprised me that it wasn't on an album. Because I've listened to the Beatles my whole life, and I thought it was just a pop. I didn't realize it wasn't because it's always been like a song that I've listened to. It's just like a kind of pop. I thought it was a really popular Beatles song. I mean, I'm sure it is really pop. Most of their songs are popular. I guess maybe just compared because they've had so many songs that have come out that have been absolutely chart smashing. Like everyone knows them, and I guess it hasn't slipped under the radar, but it's just below those in kind of popularity. So it's, I guess, talked about less.
I was surprised that it was so late because it reminded me of like their older, like more bluesy rock and rolly stuff. I expected it to be because it's not like their latest psychedelic stuff. I thought it would be like in their early albums. Then of course it wasn't in any of the albums, so I was surprised by that as well.
Yeah, 1969 it was.
Yeah. If you were wondering from before, Rubber Soul, the album that Zach chose, Norwegian Wood off, was from 1965, just for some context. I don't think we mentioned it before. No worries.
But just rhythmically, it's just a really interesting song, and like the kind of the bit where he says, "Nobody ever loved me like she does," like the kind of interlude between the chorus and the verse. That's actually like 5 beats. So they switch it up. It's a really interesting structure, adding beats here and there. But yeah, really good song. I think there's nothing more we really need to add. So Zephyr.
You really did your musical theory research, Jules. I'm impressed.
I really did.
You get a thumbs up from me.
Anyway, yeah. So Zephyr, what have you brought?
So I didn't do any research on musical theory
Classic.
because it's classic Zephyr, but I'm going to talk about Strawberry Fields Forever, and I actually have a kind of a story about why I chose this. So when I came back from the hospital when I was born, this is the first song my parents played to me ever. So it's the first song I've ever heard in my entire life, which kind of sets the tone, I guess, for my musical career, because it's such a great song.
I can imagine Zephyr making a kind of dank face just as he listens to Strawberry Fields.
As I was born, I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah, it's off Magical Mystery Tour, which is from the 1960. It was in 1967, and that was very much on their peak kind of psychedelic stage when they were doing a lot of drugs. I mean, this song is about drugs. That is all it's about. It's about, I think, LSD. Because they did a lot of sort of psychedelic. I mean, hence why they went into psychedelic music. They did a lot, and this song is about. And I just kind of want to talk about a genius production trick that George Martin did, which my friend told me about. And basically, they have an orchestra in this song which recorded a lot of the parts, but the band actually recorded in a different key and a different time signature. So what George Martin had to do was, they didn't have all the technology back then to do it all on computers and like shift it all like that. He had to literally get the tape and stretch it or like tighten it to fit. And he managed to get it in the right key and the right time signature by stretching it, which is like, no one's ever done that ever. And I don't think they have done since. It is ridiculously and also there's a lot of weird reversed sort of sounds. And actually at the end, there's this really weird bit, where it goes all, I really hate the end bit. It scares me so much. I don't know why, especially when I'm listening on my own in my bed with my eyes closed with my headphones on. It scares me a lot, because that's what I like to do, listen to this album, and this song specifically. But it's got this really weird like speaking, but it's reversed. And there's been a conspiracy theory. Obviously, there's always conspiracy theorists to have taken this and basically reversed the speech and made it louder, and it says something along the lines of "Paul is dead, he's gone, we killed him," or something weird like that. And it's a conspiracy theory that Paul McCartney was killed or died and replaced, which is obviously not true, but it's quite funny that some people believe that. But yeah, I just think there's quite a lot of cool production tricks, and it's just such a weird sound. And also the lyrics, I think I mentioned before we listened to it, but the lyrics are very much about kind of being on LSD and seeing weird things and wanting to go to these strawberry fields and be there forever. Which is, I find it interesting.
Maybe it's a clue. Maybe that's where Paul McCartney's buried, in the strawberry fields.
Maybe Paul McCartney is buried in the strawberry fields. And maybe he's there forever. He's there forever, yeah.
Don't you see?
God, we're a conspiracy theories pod now.
No, I was going to say, I didn't know the fact about George Martin having to like make the like the original vocals in the right key. And it makes sense now, because I was listening to it and I thought, some of these vocals sound a bit out of tune, like not in a bad way, but like in a way that's like, it makes it sound really trippy. And there's a lyric where it says "nothing is real," and that one especially is like, it's really flat. And I heard it, I was like, that is so out of tune. It has to be not an accident, obviously.
Yeah, there's lots of moments like that. But interrupting the "nothing is real." But there are lots of moments like that in the song because of that weird production thing. And obviously, it's not going to be perfect. He didn't have the technology to do it, but the fact that he got it so close and almost perfect is insane. It's so cool. I mean,
it's the perfect song to do it with as well, because it's not a groove that's supposed to be like on point and everyth's perfect.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like, whoa, trippy, not quite in time, not quite, in tune. And it just perfectly fits the vibe.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jules?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a kind of bit of a classic. You talked about in the break, I don't think we were recording, but you talked about the kind of it's really cool panning and something at the beginning. And that's something I think, I mean, panning is when like, because you can actually like route sound directly to like the left. Say if you're listening on headphones, like your left headphone or your right headphone. It's a kind of production thing, and it's used to like make recordings kind of sound more spacious, and it's, I guess, to kind of replicate when you're watching a kind of live show, because you'll have, you know, some instruments on different sides of the stage, and if everything was in the middle, then it would sound actually quite crowded. Anyway, but the Beatles, I've often noticed like a lot of their tracks, like not just specifically this one, they did a lot of just hard panning. Like sometimes, especially at the beginning of tracks or something, you'd hear a guitar and it's just coming out of your right earphone, which is kind of always jarring. And it's just an interesting kind of effect. And they do it quite a lot. I wish I had an example off the top of my head, but I don't.
Well, at the very beginning of the song, I think it's pan to the left. The first instrument, I think it's a sitar or a guitar that comes. I mean, this is when they were using loads of weird instruments, so it could have been a lot, any host of things. But it's hard pan to the left, and then something else comes in on the right, and then it kind of all molds together. And it's, I mean, you can actually turn that off because on I think most modern like music listening softwares, you can switch it to mono audio, where it just puts everything on both sides, so you can't hear that effect. And a lot of like some people, I mean, not a lot, musicians sometimes opt for this, but most musicians opt for stereo, which is how you get that pan side, as if you've got two speakers or two headphone sides, and you can kind of switch between them. But yeah, it's just a cool trick, and they did use it a lot, especially during the psychedelic days, I reckon, is when they used it more, when production, like technology, was getting more available to use and better as well. But I mean, panning's something that's used in kind of every recording, just more subtly than it's done, you know, a lot of the time by the Beatles. I guess. You can listen out for it. A lot of times the kind of backing guitar or something will be slightly to the right. You'll sometimes you think your headphones are broken, and that's always a bit. But Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of our discussion about the Beatles. It's taken us 6 episodes to start talking about the Beatles, so I think that, you know, that's well done us. We've held it back. But yeah, so in part 2, I've got the artist spotlight. I'm talking about Paolo Nutini. So look forward to that. Okay, welcome to part 2 of the Sidetrack Music Podcast. And now it's time for the artist spotlight. And today I'm going to be talking about Paolo Nutini. So to do a quick intro, I'm going to do this in a kind of, chronological order. We'll try a kind of slightly new artist spotlight format from me. Anyway, so he is a soul / R&B / kind of blues rock singer from the small town of Paisley, Scotland. But as his name suggests, I think he's kind of Italian descent initially. So as a teenager, he worked shifts in his family fish and chip shop between kind of recording demos. And at the young age of 19, he released his debut album in 2006, which was entitled These Streets. It went all the way to number 3 in the UK charts. It's one of my favorite albums. It's really, really cool sound. So as is kind of typical of a lot of kind of young artists, the lyrics are very real. He says they're kind of based on his experiences in the kind of 3 years leading up to the recording of the album. And there's lots of kind of bluesy and soul influences. So to give an idea of the kind of overall style, the first tune I'm going to play is from this album. It's called Loving You. And here it is.
As you slide through the door with your morals on your sleeve, and I think it's time for all those morals to leave. So let's get down and freaky, baby. Let's get restless, baby. Come on, get crazy with me. And I said, when you're loving me, I'm loving you. I love the prowess and the things that you do. And it's your flawless soul that bleeds my soul. And when you're loving me, I'm loving you. And that's when we've got it going on.
So that was Loving You from These Streets, Paolo Nutini. And yeah, that kind of song, it's quite minimalist. He plays the guitar on that, but you can immediately hear the blues influences, but how his voice kind of really fits in well. He's got a really kind of unique voice, kind of slightly raspy, husky sound. But I really like it. I think it fits perfectly in with the style of music that he does. And he also, I mean, you hear it if you hear him speaking. He's got a gloriously thick Scottish accent, which you can't actually hear too well on the record. But as I'll talk about later, on these kind of live performances, it kind of comes out a bit more. I don't know why actually, but yeah. So I mean, but by far the most successful song from the album These Streets, and the most famous one, is New Shoes, which is slightly faster, more upbeat, a kind of slightly dancier track, talking about how put some new shoes on, suddenly everything feels all right. There's some hilarious music videos that go with these songs. It's very noughties. It's just kind of, there's nothing kind of artistic about the music video. It's just kind of him walking around, like talking about the new shoes, singing. It's quite amusing. Because he's like 19. It's mad how young he was, and the kind of how he rose to kind of stardom so quickly. So yeah, I'm going to play New Shoes now. Yeah, you may recognise this one a bit more than the last one.
Woke up cold one Tuesday. I'm looking tired and feeling quite sick. I felt like there was something missing in my day-to-day life. So I quickly opened the wardrobe, pulled out some jeans and a t-shirt that seemed clean, topped it off with a pair of old shoes that were ripped around the seams. And I thought, these shoes just don't suit me. Hey, I put some new shoes on and suddenly everything's right. I said, hey, I put some new shoes on and everybody's smiling. It's so inviting. No short on money but long on time. Slowly strolling in the sweet sunshine, and I'm running late and I don't need an excuse. So I'm wearing my brand new shoes. Woke up late one Thursday and I'm seeing stars as I'm...
Okay, so that was New Shoes from These Streets, and you can immediately hear it's just a really kind of upbeat, happy, feel-good song, and it's just really good fun to listen to. Zach pointed out that Last Request might actually be the most, like, statistically the most popular song from the album, which may be true, but I don't know, it's the most kind of danceable. I think it's the one that really sums up the album and kind of the whole vibe around Paolo Nutini when it came out, because I was only 4 at the time, so I wasn't hugely aware of his presence, but I do know it was a kind of really amazing story, I think, at the time. You know, this 19-year-old in a small town in Scotland, you know, suddenly becomes this kind of huge star. Like, his debut album goes to number 3.
It's very impressive for someone of that age.
Really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And
really is. And
it's like you say, he's from a small village, so like you'd think his Scottish accent would come out. I mean, he must do it for the recordings. He must like pull it back a bit. Just so it's,
I wonder if he does.
Like, I feel like
he does tone it down.
Maybe not consciously, but like, because you said on the live recordings it's much less, because he's probably not trying. He's probably just. Like, I feel like he's probably trying, so it's like reaches a wider audience, because he's probably because it came top of the UK charts, which is, you know, it needs to appeal to Scottish people, Welsh people, and
not saying
people.
that Scottish people can't be understood with their Scottish accents.
But like, it's especially from small villages up in like North Scotland, it's harder to understand if you're not Scottish.
Thick accent.
You do have a point.
Like, like you mentioned,
if you're not native English,
if you're not native, it's harder to
understand. No, I love this song. I love the build at the start. It starts with like kind of just bass and drums and his voice with like a few chords in the background, and then like halfway through the verse, like the guitar comes in, playing these, I don't know, just really funky rhythms. And this and the other track that you played, like they really highlight how clean the mixing was and the production is in this album. Like, which you see less in his later stuff. I love his later stuff as well, but like his later stuff is slightly more kind of gritty and slightly muddy, I'd say. And I love how just clean everything is.
It's ironic. It usually starts the other way around, doesn't it? Like when people start out, it's usually much more muddy, less produced, and then they kind of get a cleaner sound as they get older. But he started off at such a high level of like music, like you hear it on the radio and it's like sounds not out of place, and he's only 19, which is very impressive.
It's very pure. That's kind of part of the beauty of it. I think it's just kind of he's I think he's written all the songs. It's just kind of him like expressing his like musicianship and all that. It's really cool. Talking about kind of the sudden success, so he catapulted to stardom, leading to a bunch of big live performances. And so this part, I want to talk about what an amazing live performer he was. So, I mean, I say he was, I guess he still is. I never saw him live, but I guess the big one, there's a live album that you can find from his set on the Pyramid Stage at Glastonbury in 2007, the famed Pyramid Stage. And the track I'm going to play from that album is the kind of the live album is Jenny Don't Be Hasty, which is also a track on These Streets. It's actually probably my favorite one. It's one of the more rock kind of style ones. Really, really catchy guitar riff. But the reason I want to play the live album version is because they do this really amazing build up. He's kind of slightly improvising on his vocals. And it's amazing because you start off and you're not entirely sure what song they're going to play. And there's this brilliant moment when they break into the groove and you hear the crowd realizing, oh, this is the song he's playing. And it literally, it gives me goosebumps, actually. I find it a really kind of powerful moment because they spend good 30, 40 seconds building up and then going into that. So I'm going to play the build up and breaking into the groove. Hopefully you can kind of feel the same power of music as me. So here's the live version of Jenny Don't Be Hasty from Glastonbury 2007. So that was the live version of Jenny Don't Be Hasty, and I hope the moment where the crowd kind of goes off when they get into the groove, absolutely amazing. I love it.
Really gives you goosebumps. That bloody hell.
Yeah,
really nice.
I wasn't even listening to it from my phone. We were listening to it on a mic just then, and you could still get that, even just from like a kind of weird distorted version of it. It still sounds really cool. It's so like, whoa, and that groove is so good as well when it kicks. It's like, I mean, I don't want to sing it, but like, it's very recognizable, and like the instrumentation and stuff is really nice. And I just I think that bit's cool.
Yeah, one thing I do notice about these live recordings of Paolo Nutini is that his voice sounds much more gruff and thicker, and less like the voice I know from his very cleanly produced like debut album. I wonder, they must have done a lot of work on his voice in the studio to get it like that. Because I mean, live, I love his voice live as well. I mean, I love both of them, but it's much like kind of more growly and like more like a metal musician's voice. Well, not like a screamer, but like a
metal. Do you want me to do a metal scream? No, I won't.
No, we're good. We're good, Zephyr. We're good.
Yeah. No, they are very different. We should talk about metal. I know none of us know anything about it, but we should. I reckon some people would appreciate it.
Yes.
Anyway, I mean, his live performances have a completely different dimension to kind of this. Compared to his studio performances, but amazing stuff. So after this kind of initial success, he released Sunny Side Up in 2009, which actually went straight to number one in the UK charts. But somewhat weirdly, it was one of the less. It was well, he's released 3 albums in his career, and it was the least kind of well received. So he not completely, really pivoted in style. It went to a kind of more folky country kind of style. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of that album. I don't think it's his best work. There's one song from that album called Candy, which is a pretty sad song, but it's a really, really, really good song. I really like it. It's a really kind of powerful one. But I don't really have much to say about the rest of the album because, I don't like it that much. But it sold plenty of records, maybe just based off its kind of earlier success. But, it was a relatively good success at the box office, I guess. And then he did more live performances. And in 2014, he released Caustic Love, which was another kind of style shift as well. So he came away more from the folk country vibes and went closer to kind of soul and R&B. So whereas his kind of first album was kind of soul R&B, but with rock influences, the Caustic Love is very soul. It's kind of hip hop vibes as well. Very different as well. And this one didn't sell quite as well, maybe because the hype had kind of died down. This is 8 years after his kind of first breakthrough, but it was really well critically acclaimed. Critics absolutely loved it, which doesn't always translate to album sales, unfortunately. But I think it's a really cool one, and I've only started listening to it more regularly recently. But I think the track that best illustrates the kind of change in sound is Iron Sky, which is what I'm going to play now. And I think, maybe listen out for it now, but I think this album, it slightly reminds me of Amy Winehouse, some of the tracks and the vibes that he kind of gives off. I don't know if that's a deliberate thing, but it sounds, or maybe that's just because of the kind of style that he's changed to in this album, but it's more on that side. But yeah, anyway, here's Iron Sky from Caustic Love.
We are proud individuals living for the city, but the flames couldn't go much higher. We find God and religions to paint us with salvation, but no one.
So that was Iron Sky from Caustic Love, Paolo Nutini's as of yet last album in 2014. So yeah, and you can just kind of hear it. I mean, that song is less kind of Amy Winehouse style, but there's a lot of other songs in the album which really reminded me of Amy Winehouse. But it's just a kind of it's a different style. It's a really interesting style, and I think the album's actually worth listening to. It's been slightly forgotten about. But yeah, the final thing I want to talk about with Paolo Nutini is basically he's disappeared. Not physically, like we know. I think he's still just chilling around in Paisley, Scotland. But he's had since I think 2017 or 16 or 17 was his last kind of live appearance playing music. So he's kind of had a hiatus. I don't know, and I don't know what's happened, and it's quite sad. So Paolo, if you're listening, please come back. We want more of your music. Because he's a really incredible talent, and it would be a shame to kind of. I'm sure he's got his reasons. I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows the full story as to why. There's a lot of people wondering, I think, what's happened.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if he just got bored. Like, you can tell from his albums like that he kind of switches from styles quite a lot, and maybe he just thinks like, I've done everything I can offer to the world. Like,
yeah, maybe just ran out of ideas.
I understand the getting tired of playing the same songs over and over again at concerts. Like, I mean, he doesn't have one-hit singles. He doesn't have a one-hit single, thank God, because bands who have a one-hit single, it must be soul-destroying. Just being like, but look at all the other songs we have, and no one cares. But I get how it can be quite wearing. Yeah. I mean, I'd really love to hear some more of his stuff. Maybe he's just slaving away. Maybe he's doing a Beatles. He's making a whole studio album.
Maybe, for the last 7 years, he's been working on and what's the word? A kind of a huge
Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club band. Album.
A huge kind of 10-hour long album.
No,
pure soul. And
hopefully, we're to expect another Sgt. Pepper's album to come out from his time away.
Yeah, because it is also just like on his live performances, it sounds like he's having kind of so much fun. He with such good energy. I want to see him come back. So it's a really interesting one because he's still, if he was 19 in 2006, so he's in his 30s now. He's still got plenty of years ahead of him. It's not like he's kind of. What, Zephyr? What are you doing?
Zephyr just got out a lightsaber on our call. For those of you who can't see, which is everyone, obviously.
I got sidetracked. I apologise.
Zephyr got bored of the Paolo Nutini conversation.
I did not get bored. I'd never really heard him before, to be honest, until you've told me that this is the artist spotlight you chose, and I actually have really, really enjoyed his music, especially the one that we listened to the live version of, which I've completely
Jenny OBH.
Yeah, that one. I really, really like that song. And yeah, I'm gonna go listen to all his albums now. And I encourage the rest of you to go do that. But yeah, no, I actually have really enjoyed it. And sorry for that little distraction I just had.
It's okay. Well, we hope you agree with Zephyr. It's definitely worth listening to, especially. These Streets and Caustic Love are both proper albums, and that you can listen the whole way through, and it's worth listening the whole way through because there's lots of hidden gems. There's a track actually in Caustic Love with Janelle Monáe. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but
she's a cool singer.
She's a big thing.
Yeah, is she an R&B like singer?
Yeah, she's like an R&B singer. She also acts a bit, I think.
I've seen her in movies. I can't remember.
She was in Hidden Figures or something, I think.
Yes, Hidden Figures, the one about the NASA scientists, wasn't it? Mathematicians.
Exactly.
Sorry, the NASA mathematicians. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah. Anyway, okay, yeah. So we will wrap up the show. We've talked about Beatles songs, Strawberry Fields, Don't Let Me Down, and Norwegian Wood, and we've done an artist spotlight about Paolo Nutini. So thanks so much for listening. Please do subscribe so you get all the next episodes. Share the podcast with your friends and family. And we'll be back next time. Thanks for listening.
Sidetracked, the music podcast.